Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of All Access AM. I am Billy Embody. Thanks for joining us on this Thursday. Does anybody else have kids that are still adjusting to the time change? Mine is he slept into a cool 7:30, which puts it right on the button as far as that tight timeline to get back for the 8 a.m. start time that we have. So apologize for the first couple minutes. Maybe some of you waiting around for this to hit your YouTube feed, but we are now good to go. We are now looking into the weekend of the ACC tournament on this show today, where we'll break down the matchups that Thursday and beyond brings in this ACC tournament that's been interesting, but now it really heats up. Now you get to the meat of it as far as the top teams getting into action and getting their feet wet in tournament play in Charlotte at the Spectrum Center, and looking forward to getting underway today. This is kind of the first, really between yesterday and Thursday. You really start to feel like, okay, this is truly March now. This is where you get your days tied up with the multi-screen going, maybe in the office while you're sitting there working away the day, just hoping to get home in time to catch the evening ones. Well, that's what it's all here for, and we'll have James Fletcher here for us at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time to break down the NCAA tournament race, the Bubble Watch Selection Sunday news to follow as that gets closer and closer for many teams, learning their NCAA tournament fate on the bubble, but also, of course, the seeding aspect. The teams that know they're in, are there any bid sealers that pop up out of nowhere, so to speak? We'll get all that from James Fletcher here in just a little bit. So we will break down the Wednesday action from the ACC tournament, but do want to remind you guys that we are presented by our friends at Horn Legend. And Horn Legend has such an incredible line of the college classics that you, as an ACC fan, you want to have. You want to complement your Duke wear, your Clemson wear, your Miami wear with some of their incredible St. Patty's Day gear. You can get all of that at hornlegend.com. They have a tremendous amount of polos, quarter zips, pullovers, and more. They really bring it in the pullover perspective, like with the hooded angle. That it cooled down here in Dallas. I really like these. They're great for playing golf because they're light enough that you can just stick them in your golf bag and then pick them back up when you need them. So there's a lot of different items on Horn Legend that I just love. And when you get 2 items or more in your cart, I believe you get free shipping right now. So don't hold me to that. That might be something of a moving target for them when you're on the site. But make sure you check out our friends at Horn Legend today and see what it's all about as they continue to just add more and more on the polo front too. Not even the college side, but just your everyday polos. They just do a great job. So go to hornlegend.com and please support them and click on the link in our podcast episode description to support them. Let's get to Wednesday action in the ACC tournament. And this was a day with 8 teams in action for the first time. Tuesday brought the 6-team slate. Wednesday, you get SMU, Louisville, Pitt, NC State, Cal versus Florida State, and Wake Forest versus Clemson. And 2 games in particular really stand out in a sense for true bubble watch. Because I say that because NC State is in. I don't think there's little doubt about that now that in particular they've gotten a win in the ACC tournament. You have a group that is safely in now. I feel like with Will Wade kind of stopping that skid against a pesky Pitt team that dispatched Stanford and dashed their tournament hopes on Tuesday to advance in that tremendous game to really kick things off. But let's go to SMU Louisville. And for SMU, this game that they did not execute down the stretch, but at the same time, their top player, Boopy Miller, for the first time in 40 games, held to single-digit scoring. That was a tremendous job by Louisville in a sense, but also, Boopy Miller, he had his opportunities. He had some open looks. I think he airballed a 3 in the first half. There was just not that usual scoring punch where you're thinking, okay, he took 8 threes. You're thinking a few of them are going to go in, at worst 2 or 3. And they didn't get that from him. They didn't get any 3-pointers to fall from Boopy Miller. And SMU had a couple of other looks that did not drop in the final minutes. SMU was held scoreless for the final, I think, 240 or so. And that now puts SMU sweating Selection Sunday instead of having a win under your belt. And you're kind of playing with house money, then you feel pretty safe as the selection day approaches. And instead, you're having to sweat it out. And according to most bracketologists, SMU is a last four in, and they're sitting at last four in. And even as teams around them end up kind of either losing or a couple, there's a couple of teams in the first four out that were able to have moments where they were able to get a win, like Auburn. Auburn's not going to push SMU out of the NCAA tournament in terms of the final four, the last four in. And I think for the most part, from what you see in the bracketology, it seems like SMU might not be the last team in the tournament. That might be Auburn, but you are seeing an SMU team that is flirting with that, sweat factor. I mean, that's what it is. And they did not execute down the stretch in this game against Louisville, and that's pretty much why they're going to sweat. When you see Missouri face off against Kentucky today in the SEC tournament, this is an opportunity where if you're an ACC fan and you're hoping for the full 8 bids to get hooked up with the ACC that is kind of projected right now, you obviously are a huge Kentucky fan, just hoping for another opportunity where Missouri can get knocked down a peg. And then, of course, you're even bigger Tennessee fans as they take on Auburn in the SEC tournament today. Both of those teams are kind of that group that SMU is kind of battling with for the most part. There's VCU there as well, but that game they play in the A10 tournament tomorrow and will kind of return to action in that sense. But for SMU right now, they're projected to face off against Missouri in the first four in Dayton. VCU facing Auburn. We'll break all that down with James Fletcher here in just a little bit, and what SMU fans should be watching for, and what NC State fans should be watching for. I think just in terms of seeding now and seeing how that plays out for them in the eyes of the NCAA tournament committee and selection committee. But for SMU, Ryan Conwell was just a thorn in their side. He was, terrific down the stretch, made shots when his team needed him most. And that's what stood out to me when evaluating his play. He was a really, really terrific defender on Boopy Miller. I thought he was able to be physical at times with him and kind of knock him off his game a little bit. And Andy Enfield kind of called out officiating. I think anytime there's a 20-3 free throw discrepancy, I mean, something's going on in a sense. And it's I would say that for any team. I mean, that's kind of a baseline determining number as far as what you're looking at, because I mean, you really could say in a lopsided type of matchup, maybe there's a way you see that, but in reality, I mean, 20-3 on the free throw front is a really, really tough number to see in terms of the large amount of discrepancy there. SMU lost Samet Yigitolu down the stretch as he fouled out. That really hurt. But really one of the plays that changed the entire game, and I think, somebody that covers SMU, I mean, this is going to come off as probably sour grapes, but Zugris with, probably like 6 minutes to play, it felt like, he got tangled up with Samet Yigitolu, and you could totally make the argument around, was it a foul? Was it a flagrant? I don't think so. But the way it happened was Zugris got tangled up with Samet Yigitolu. He then holds his elbow and goes down, and the officials are able to stop play and review this foul because as he's holding his elbow, he's writhing in pain, or so it appears, on the floor and saying, review it, review it, review it. And watching a play like that impede the flow of play, and it allowed Louisville, I believe, it either allowed Louisville. I have to go back and really look, but it allowed Louisville to really set their defense or set up their offense. I would have to go back and look now that I am thinking about this. But with the officials being able to stop the play like that, it was a big moment that kind of energized the Louisville team. However it kind of played out there. And that was something that, really ended up, impacting this game. And it was a flop. And it was a play that I think the league needs to look at when you are writhing in pain and you're able to stop play, but um, then you're getting the officials to try and review something, and you're stopping the play, it and then you're back in there right after that. Like, that's not how basketball. That's cheap to me. So I don't know what the league can do to address that. It could be, a technical foul to fake an injury, like we see a lot of that discussion around in football. But at the end of the day, SMU didn't capitalize down the stretch, and it was it was a disappointing effort uh, down the stretch by SMU. But at the same time, they only have themselves to blame for the way they played offensively, especially their kind of big two in the lineup, Dron Pierre Jr. and Boopy Miller. Boopy finished with 8, Dron Pierre finished with 17, and a lot of that was in the second half, which has kind of been the story for Dron Pierre, as he's now a streaky player for SMU. So we'll see what happens if SMU gets in the NCAA tournament as it's projected right now. That'll be an interesting uh, storyline to watch. Is Boopy Miller's been pretty consistent for SMU. I mean, this isn't an attack Boopy Miller podcast at this point, but it is a uh, opportunity for Dron Pierre to show that he can actually carry this team for 40 minutes, because right now he's not doing it. His defensive play is still suspect in key moments, and as much as he is incredibly talented, it's been disappointing the way he's been performing down the stretch, especially in the first half of games. And that's allowed games to stay close. That's allowed SMU to be in a dogfight versus pulling away. He's had turnovers. So something's got to get figured out there for SMU. And if they get into the tournament, they have a full week off now. So time to rest up, time to get things right. SMU's saying BJ Edwards is going to be available. We'll see about that. But for Louisville, on the other hand, they advance. They now face off against Miami, a team that is certainly in the NCAA tournament as well. They'll face them on Thursday in the 1:30 game, a team that they just beat on the road without Michael Brown. And Michael Brown is still on watch for his injury and where things stand there, as he said, quote, right now I'm focused on my rehab more than anything, and when the time feels right, I'm going to talk to the coaching staff and we're going to come to an agreement. And Michael Brown, the way this has kind of played out throughout the year, is his injury status at times has been kind of shrouded in secrecy. Even, you remember, maybe back in December and around the start of ACC play, there was those moments where, why isn't he playing? Why isn't he doing this? But he eventually returned and went on to be, one of the best players in the ACC, and especially in league play, and was playing as such, and has averaged 18 points a game, just been terrific. So if Louisville gets him back at some point, great. I gotta imagine they are waiting for the ACC tournament for him, and that is probably the wise move with just where he is and dealing with an injury and all those things. So rest it up, and then go push the pace a little bit in March to see what you can do to become a legend for the Cards. So as you go to the rest of the Wednesday games, that Pitt NC State game, NC State did a really good job here. Offensively, defensively, they were able to tighten up down the stretch just enough to get this one done. NC State, man, they are such an interesting group to watch. Kadir Copeland, 24 points on the day. All 5 starters in double figures for the Wolfpack, and then one bench player, Matt Abel, 12 points coming off the bench. And for Pitt, they were able to get a huge outing from Cameron Cohen. Uh, he was able to lead all scores with 27 on the day. It would have been quite the interesting, you know, upset for Pitt to kind of get through the NCAA or the ACC tournament with a win over a tournament team and kind of make things interesting. But nonetheless, NC State just pulled away, just too talented offensively for Pitt to keep up. They shot 61% from the field. They were able to limit their turnovers. They just had 6. And, Kadir Copeland had 5 of the 6. But for him, he's been so terrific for this team. He was on my all ACC team group. So you're able to pick like 15 players. He was one of my picks for the all ACC teams that came out. And when you see this game between NC State and Pitt, this one is a big relief for Will Wade. I think this one obviously locks them into the NCAA tournament. We'll see where they end up on, as far as seeding goes. But Will's first season in Raleigh has to be deemed a success. There's also moments of frustration kind of down the stretch in this season, which is similar to, like an SMU, the way they finished their season out. But now you can wipe the slate clean and they get to play on Thursday and get an opportunity against Virginia right off the bat, 11 a.m. on ESPN2 to really set the stage for them to improve their seating here in Charlotte. So we'll be watching it very closely with the Spectrum Center, probably rocking for that one, I got to imagine, to kick off this Thursday. And for either team's fans, hoping for a long weekend in Charlotte for sure ahead of Selection Sunday. So we'll be tracking that one, of course, and NC State looking to make one more splash in the eyes of the committee with a run in Charlotte. And for Virginia, they're looking to secure their seating. They're at a spot where they need to continue to show that they're one of the best teams in the country. They're ranked 10th in the AP poll. They have a chance here to really cement themselves as one of the top seeds in the tournament. So I gotta imagine Virginia will be able to take care of business against NC State, unless that streaky play that we saw from NC State down the stretch was just kind of a weird aberration of a team that was super comfortable with where it was, and then you play in this league and you get kind of chewed up and spit out in a sense because it is so difficult to play in night out. But in Charlotte, everybody's on a neutral floor, and weird things can happen in the Spectrum Center. So NC State gets a win over Pitt. They stop the bleeding in a sense with that, and they get a chance now to make a big statement in Charlotte as they take on Virginia on Thursday. Another statement, and I put them on the thumbnail for this episode because you've got to give respect to the way Florida State has played. There are some times when you look at the NCAA tournament that you wish the first 4 could almost be all right, who is legitimately the hottest team in the country? Let's put them in and see how they do. And you got to be above like a certain threshold of like, you have to be above 500 in conference play. Well, that's what Florida State has at 10-8 going into this tournament. And they go out and they beat Cal 95-89. And, they didn't control this game the entire way. Cal fought back. Cal made it interesting down the stretch, but FSU got what it wanted in both halves offensively. They had 30 points from Robert McRae V. Again, we've talked about him on the pod at length. If I'm starting my team and you have one of those challenges where, you're giving players and one's $1, one's $2, one's $3, one's $4, one's $5, and you have it across 5 positions and you say, okay, build a team for $10. If Robert McRae is like a $2 player in that sense, man, I'm taking him and then building around him. And I think I've got a steal. And maybe that is the wrong, kind of number for him, but still, I think he's one of the best point guards in the ACC. He brings it. He's got size. He's got athleticism. He shot 4 of 7 from 3. He's 10 of 17 from the field. He's just terrific. And he does so much that makes FSU go. And when he's on, it's on for the Seminoles. And they were able to put up 95 on Cal. And Day Ames had 27 for the Bears, but it wasn't enough. And, Cal went from a team that after they beat SMU at home in one of the biggest games in Cal basketball history, they weren't able to get much beyond that. And it's unfortunate for them because they're now off the bubble completely, I would say, and that is disappointing for them. But it would be fascinating to see FSU get into the NCAA tournament. They're not going to. They were terrible in non-conference play, and that's where they sit, unfortunately for them. But now you have a team that just is able to go out and play, free and play fun. And on Thursday they're going to get Duke now at 6 o'clock on ESPN Central Time, and I think that's a matchup with all the injuries that Duke's had with Caleb Foster and Patting Youngba, and the new role with Caden Boozer having to play more as the lead guard. That's going to be something to watch, and FSU is going to have the athleticism, I think, to at least make that game interesting. Of course, now Duke will probably blow them out. I mean, that's just kind of how the Blue Devils have been able to operate. But when you look at FSU, man, nobody wants to face them. They're just so good right now in ACC play, and they're bringing it every single night. So congrats to Luke Locks again. We've sung his praises plenty on this podcast for what he's been able to do. In the other game on Wednesday, you had Wake Forest, Clemson. Clemson takes down Wake Forest 71-62. So that game where Clemson built a nice lead in the first half, 41-23, they were able to, just hold off Wake Forest and really not make it any sort of a game. Juke Harris did everything he could for Wake with 22 points and another 20 from Cal Meese off the bench. But, Clemson just so much balanced scoring, only one player in double figures, RJ Godfrey with 11. And then the rest of the way, it's everybody from 6 to 8 points, it seems like. And they would just get that balance scoring, that deep team. And defensively, they just were terrific on Wake Forest. And, I think when you see Clemson and their depth and what they have heading into the NCAA tournament, you got to be feeling good if you're the Tigers, just from a depth perspective. They've been able to kind of stop their skid as of late. They now go on in Thursday to face North Carolina in the late game, 8:30 p.m. Central Time on ESPN. So we'll see how late that one actually ends up starting. But with Clemson, they're sitting at a good spot now that they kind of bounce back from that end of the season stretch, and they've now won 3 of their last 4. And they were really, really close to beating North Carolina last time out. So on a neutral site this time, can they get that statement win that helps them in seeding and knocks UNC's ACC tournament dreams down a peg and knocks them out? That'll be probably the game that I'm most looking forward to from a pure matchup perspective, where you have all these teams that I think can have competitive games. But it would be really disappointing if you're a Clemson fan and you're rolling into the Spectrum Center and you don't see a competitive game for that late one, because that Clemson team has the depth, has the waves to keep coming after you. And UNC, with the Caleb Wilson injury and just some of the adversity that they've faced through that, they're still a very, very good team, no question. And Hubert Davis has done a terrific job with that roster. Going into the Duke game, they had won 4 straight. 5 of their last 6, but when it comes to this depth and playing night after night in the ACC tournament, Clemson has that luxury where they're in a good spot overall to kind of play this level of basketball with the ACC tournament, being night after night for these teams. That's because they have the depth to do it. And they can, handle what they need to handle on that front. So we will be joined shortly by our friend James Fletcher of On3 to break down all the bracketology. And we're excited to have James on in just a second. But basketball fans, make sure you guys are checking out our friends at Sportsmo. The Sportsmo app can help you support your favorite college basketball team with micro donations that help the school that you pick, fund their athletic department. So make sure you guys download the app. It's super simple. You choose your team, you connect with other friends and fans on there. You can bet against each other if you're opposing fans. You can do all those things. Look, the Sportsmo app is just so easy to work. So be a part of the action with our friends at Sportsmo today.
College basketball hits different with Sportsmo. You tap, they score. You pledge, they drop a three. You give as a group, they win as a team. At this point, you're not watching a game, you're in it. Download the app, fund your wallet, and get in the game. Download Sportsmo. Power the play.
And before we power the play with our friend James Fletcher, do want to remind you guys, when you are watching your March Madness this year, make sure you guys are trying out our friends Socorro. Socorro Tequila, it is agave water and yeast. It is a incredibly refreshing and clean tequila that has won awards, that has your options of the Añejo, the Blanco, the Reposado. You can make cocktails with this tequila just as much as you can sip on it just on the rocks. And before I tried Socorro, I was not a big, let me just sip tequila on the rocks or just sip it straight. But you can do that. That is the beautiful thing about Socorro tequila. And you might as well try the whole family. You've got Añejo, Blanco, Reposado. Well, guess what? When you order 3 bottles or more online, it's free shipping. So you don't even have to go out to the liquor store. You don't have to find it on the shelf. You can just have it delivered right to your door. And our friends at Socorro are terrific friends of ours, and they're very, very excited about what's next for their company as they continue to grow and make a statement in the Socorro industry. So without any further ado, we do get to bracketology as we promised. And our friend James Fletcher joins us again. No rest for the weary, James, as that is the time of year for you. What were some of your main takeaways from the early half of this week?
A lot of bubble teams that really didn't capitalize on opportunities. That's kind of been the case for the last few weeks here. It's been the real storyline that we've continued to follow. We saw so many losing streaks for these teams down the last week or two of the season, and then that kind of carried into conference tournament play. We at least got a couple of wins from teams to give us some hope that we're going to get a bubble out of this. After all, we're going to get to 68 teams that maybe deserve is a strong word, but can fill out the bracket by the time it's all said and done on Selection Sunday. But yeah, a lot of bubble teams that did not capitalize on opportunities and are now pretty locked in on the wrong side of things.
And one team that is, locked in, it seems like, as those bubble teams fall and nobody takes advantage of the door being left open. But man, SMU, are they locked in your eyes? I mean, barring like a bid stealer, I guess. I mean, what are some of the bid stealers that SMU fans should be watching for?
Yeah, I think bid stealer is the main way that they would be knocked out of the field right now. The last 4 in, as we stand this morning, is Missouri, VCU, SMU, and then Auburn. So if you're SMU, you're still in the field, but as we know, your resume is kind of complete at this point. You have to just sit back and watch. We still have New Mexico playing in the Mountain West, San Diego State in that conference as well. Oklahoma is making this late charge out of the SEC, one of the only bubble teams that is winning games, and they weren't even really a bubble team just a week ago. So those are the teams to watch out for. You want to see them exit their conference tournaments as quick as possible, along with Auburn, as we know, right below them in the bracket. And VCU is another team. They don't start until tomorrow, but if they lost in their first game, they would for sure drop below SMU again. That would give SMU even more cushion when these bid stealers potentially arrive. And yes, the bid stealers are the main threat to this SMU team as things stand today. We've got, of course, the bid stealers that could come out of the high major conferences. Those would really shake things up, but I think the most likely place we're going to see bid stealers is going to be in one of 3 places. The A10, where St. Louis is already in the field. They're a 9 seed right now, even with a loss in their conference tournament. They're not going to drop all the way out of things. So if VCU, who is currently in that last 4 conversation, wins the conference, say even a Dayton wins that conference tournament, that would really shake things up and drop some of these teams down the board as we get to Selection Sunday. Of course, the Mountain West is a lively one. Utah State firmly in the field. Again, they're on the 8 seed line right now. And so we know that they could, if they lose, open up another spot for a Mountain West team that would drop this overall number of teams that get at-large bids by 1 at least relative to what we thought it would be. And the last one, of course, being Miami, Ohio in the MAC. They went undefeated through the regular season. They're going to get a spot in the NCAA tournament. But if they don't win the conference tournament, if an Akron or someone else goes on to win that, they will also get a spot that will push the bubble up one position and really leave some of these teams in an interesting position as they try to wait and sweat things out on Selection Sunday.
What do you think your first four outs as it stands? New Mexico, San Diego State, Indiana, which lost to Northwestern last night, and Oklahoma. I would say three of those four, New Mexico, San Diego State, Oklahoma, since Indiana lost, are maybe the biggest threats for SMU if the tournament committee, if the selection committee is just sitting there making the decision. Is that maybe your feel just as far as those teams that are kind of directly battling with SMU, or are those teams in your eyes kind of already out?
I do think that Indiana is probably out. We can have the debate between Indiana and Auburn, but I don't think there's a debate between Indiana and SMU. So in terms of SMU's perspective, yes, they're safe from them. It's going to come down to those other three. Now, San Diego State was a little bit further off the bubble than New Mexico was as we entered conference tournament weekend. They've, of course, gotten kind of squished together in terms of the rankings, but New Mexico is much closer to Auburn and SMU than San Diego State. That said, there are opportunities in the Mountain West Conference tournament for both of those teams to pick up some wins that would be meaningful. Tonight, New Mexico is going to play San Jose State, so not a big opportunity. They're not going to just vault up because they get a win. San Diego State, on the other hand, plays Colorado State, which is a good, not great game to add to your resume. Colorado State has been dangerous, though. Could knock San Diego State out, then they would join the category with Indiana that just can't catch up because they don't have any more opportunities to build on their resume at this point. And Oklahoma is the real wild card right here because they keep winning and they just keep keeping their season alive. If they can make a deep run in the SEC tournament, they're going to have not only a handful of wins that are going to look really impressive on the resume, but they're also going to have the case in the eyes of certainly someone in that selection room. Someone's going to raise their hand and say, this is one of the hottest teams in the country right now. Do we really want to leave them out for a team we're going to get picked apart for that had a lackluster stretch down the end of the season?
I'm so glad you said that on the committee that they're going to say, okay, who's hot? I mean, that's Oklahoma. And I made the point before you got on that, man, it'd be nice if the first four was a group of teams that are above 500 in conference play and have like Florida State. Like they are really, really intriguing now that we see them, but obviously their ship is sunk. But with Oklahoma, they're a team that, like you said, keeps winning. How much do they weigh that? And then the committee is going to have to say, okay, well, SMU's faltered off here late, but they are also without BJ Edwards. They're saying he's going to be back. That conversation, how heated could that get in the room?
Yeah, the injury is going to play a key role here too. The committee did acknowledge in a teleconference yesterday that yes, injuries are an art, not a science, was the quote that Keith Gill gave us. It's not just an applicable rule that we establish in the bracketing. What we have to do is have conversations about these teams, have conversations about that injury. What did the team look like with the player, without the player? And will that player come back? And to what degree do we think that player is going to fix everything that went wrong? I think that's going to be the case if you're SMU. And it's a really strong case. I think that as long as the projections continue to tell us that Edwards will return, I think that they've got a good chance of being on the right side of some of those debates. And it could help them at the end of the day land inside this field as a team that was very strong with him. Looked like they were a pretty weak bubble team without him. Now we find out, how does the committee weigh those two different sample sizes? Do they take the big one that, of course, had him with it and could be what they look like in the NCAA tournament? Or do they say, look, you're coming into this thing, we're unsure. We don't know to what degree he would even come back, what percentage he would be at if he returned. And so we're going to go with someone who is a hotter team right now. Like I said, SMU's still on the right side as things stand, but there's a lot of scenarios that could play out and put them in jeopardy here.
And a team that stopped their skid, NC State, with a win over Pitt, a crazy, wild, high-scoring affair. What are your takeaways on NC State? Obviously, not a bubble team, but a team that if they fell to today in the ACC tournament, I mean, could there be any discussion that you could say, okay, this is a team that just isn't playing very well down the stretch here? Let's put them in the first four, or is that way out of whack?
I think that we have a weak enough bubble that they are going to be safely in. I really think that the 10 seed line as a whole is pretty safe at this point. You look at the 11 seed line as kind of the cutoff of where we can start to debate teams that, yeah, they haven't been very good. And so do we keep them in this spot? Do we start to move them down into that last four in? Missouri is the team that kind of got that treatment this morning and last night as we kind of scrubbed through the data. Missouri drops into that last four because they went on a losing streak to close the season. They, of course, get another chance here today to kind of right that and get back off of the last four in. But it's been an interesting kind of ebb and flow here at the bottom of the bracket, but I do think that the 10 seeds are safe because you look at the bottom, and even if they fell into that last four in at some point, you're really just not in any danger of being below an Auburn, a New Mexico, the Indianas that are on that cut line that might not make it in.
Let me ask you a question here. What is your overall feel for the ACC and just where they stand heading into March Madness with the teams that are currently projected to make it in, and then of course kind of the future of the league with the FSU's, the Cals, the Stanford, some of those teams that have kind of hung around bubble talk this year?
Yeah, I do think that the future is very bright for the ACC. You mentioned those programs that are on the rise. There's a couple more that are going to be changing out the leadership, trying to get things headed in the right direction. We know the huge investment that was poured into so many of these programs over the last year or two in the coaching cycle, and it's paid off big dividends. We're talking about NC State. We're talking about SMU. We're talking about many of these other teams that made a shift, Miami in there as well. They made coaching changes. Other teams invested heavily in the roster, whether that's Louisville, North Carolina. That has all paid off, and they are right now reestablishing themselves as one of the top conferences in college basketball. This year, though, they are likely to get 8 teams in the field, which I think is a really good leap from what they've had the last couple of years. We've really been able to, for the last 4 years or so, talk about 3 ACC teams, and then can they get in that 4th or 5th, depending on how the bubble falls. So this is a big leap forward, and I think it's going to continue as the years go on and as these coaches continue to establish themselves and the investment continues to come in.
Let me ask you another random one for you. You mentioned the jobs coming open in this conference. Syracuse, Boston College, Georgia Tech are the ones open right now. We'll see what Pitt ends up doing with Jeff Capel. What's your best job that you're looking at in this ACC? What is the best opening right now for you? Is it Syracuse or is it Georgia Tech? I don't think anybody's going to say it's Boston College, but that's kind of the state of their whole program outside of hockey, it seems like.
Yeah, I do think it has to be Syracuse just because of the history that goes with it. We know about the lack of investment that there's been in some of those other programs in recent seasons. And so going into Syracuse, you know that you're going to be able to put on the pressure. You're going to be able to demand resources. If you want it to get back to what it was in its prime, and that's what the fans are begging for, that's why you're making this change. You've seen the Carrier Dome this year be emptier than we've ever seen it. And so there is a real kind of rally call for something different. That's going to require investment. And so if you're the coach and you enter that door, you can now start making demands. I need this much money. I need this guy on staff. I need this player from the portal. We've got to get these things done if we're going to turn this around the same way that we saw other ACC programs do last year. So Syracuse would be my top job that's available in the ACC right now. But I also don't think it's quite the job that we remember it to be sometimes. I hear people talk about the transition from Boeheim and how it's not what it was when he left. Well, it kind of is the job that it was when he left. The last couple of years of Jim Boeheim were not great. He did not adjust very well to this new era of college basketball. And so, yes, things continued either to go downhill or to steadily be below the expectation. But Syracuse basketball has a longer issue than a 3-year sample. They've got to catch up with the times in a major way. That I think it's time for them to have that wake up call if they're going to get back to the giants that they have been.
It's going to be fascinating to see what Syracuse does. They hired Byron Blair from Toledo as their next AD. Seems like on paper, good hire, understands the NIL space well, and what Toledo's done in that area. But, with I got one more for you, and this is off the wall. You're from Memphis.
Yes.
State of Memphis basketball right now under Penny Hardaway. Give me your take on my wife's hometown college.
Yeah, it's been a real roller coaster here. A lot of downs in the roller coaster this season. But we know the 8-year tenure of Penny Hardaway. Look, there's been some really good highs. You've had just the announcement that he was coming, that he was going to return to his alma mater and be the head coach. You had a number 1 recruiting class in the mix there, a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. A really solid game against Gonzaga, taking a 1 seed down to the wire at one point in the postseason. But there's been too many lows, too many run-ins with the NCAA, too many down seasons that just didn't live up to Memphis expectations. And so for Penny Hardaway, this is really a make or break off season. It sounds like that it's on the fence. I know that there's a lot of people clamoring and kind of calling for this is time for the end. And I would be understanding if that was the case, given how bad this season was. We've seen coaches who just have this down of a season end up out of a job. And so if they went that route, I don't think you could blame anyone, but I also think it's a pretty hard sell for a city that is so kind of connected to Penny Hardaway, the person, as much as the head coach, the player, as much as the head coach. You kind of do need to extend this out into one more season, I think. Throw all the resources at this. This is something that's not just exclusive to Memphis. We see this across college basketball. The buyout is big. The fan reaction might not be great if we fire this guy right now. So let's throw the money at it. Let's give him a complete staff around him. Let's build him a roster. And if he can't get it done then no one can say anything. We move on and we focus our resources elsewhere. I think that's what Memphis is likely going to do at this point. And I think it's probably the best path forward. Is it likely that he turns it around and suddenly Memphis is back in the top 25 conversation? I'm not so sure, especially in the American. We just talked about SMU for a long time. That Memphis has been left behind by the top teams in that conference. It used to be just knockout, drag out fights with Houston. That's no longer happening. They are in a conference that is just much weaker. And so for them to kind of backslide even within that conference, really concerning and something that has to get resolved really quickly here. I think they're going to throw money at it first. And if that doesn't work, you'll see a new head coach after 9 years of Penny Hardaway.
It's crazy. 9 years fly us by. I remember when he was hired, and Memphis, like you said, kind of fighting for their life in the American in a sense with being, in that situation would go a long way for them as an athletic department with everything they're doing with Liberty Bowl and all that for them to get on the right side of it. But James Fletcher, you're always going to be on the right side of the bubble in our eyes. So we appreciate you stopping in and doing some bracketology with us. We'll see you maybe Monday. Doing a full reaction show to the field, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
All right, there he goes. James Fletcher of On3 joining us. We appreciate him. All the work he does on bracketology for us over at On3. Just incredible time of year for him to be nearing that finish line, to seeing what all of the work he's put into putting that bracket together ends up being in the eyes of the committee, and what he gets right, what he gets wrong, so to speak. But let's wrap up with this. Quick note on Auburn. Tennessee today. Nate Amont, the star freshman for the Vols, is going to play, according to reports out there this morning. So that is big for Tennessee. If you're watching Auburn and their NCAA tournament resume, they'll have a tougher test to go through now with the Vols having Nate Amont. So that's key. And James Fletcher did this research for us. The teams that in the eyes of Ken Palm data are the national champions. And it's so funny how you see these things play out. But the averages for a national champion on offense and defense kind of as a whole, Michigan, Arizona, Duke, Florida might very well end up being all four of the number one seeds. So that makes sense. The offensive teams only that are ACC, you have for national champions. The Louisville is there. NC State is in there for the ACC, and then Final Four teams on offense. And the funny thing is, defense only. No teams line up as a national championship team. So it's kind of funny how you're either of the caliber of a total team, but you can't necessarily have the defense to win a national championship in a sense. So it's interesting how this data kind of comes together. But then you get the Final Four teams offensively that sit there with Virginia, SMU, and Miami in there. So this is all data points. You could find it at on3.com. I don't want to share all of the article that James put so much time into, but it is a really interesting piece of the puzzle when you're talking about teams getting hot in the NCAA tournament and becoming those stories that go deep. The offensive side of things, obviously, defense and the quality of performance on that side of the floor matters. But when you're talking about getting hot and making a run, you got to have your guys firing on all cylinders. So Ken Palm points to some ACC teams that could find themselves in the Final Four. So look, with that, guys, kind of a shorter show today, but we will be back Monday for full reaction on the NCAA tournament bracket. That'll be out. What they got right, what they got wrong. We'll have tons of reaction from Selection Sunday on Monday's show, and we'll get even deeper into spring ball previews as well. Looking forward to doing that with some special guests too, as for many teams, they're now in the midst of spring practice. So I hope you guys enjoyed this edition of All Access AM. Hope everybody has a great weekend and enjoy all the ACC tournament action. We will catch you guys on Monday. Thanks for watching All Access AM.